Hi all, I have another fascinating game to show you from the GRENKE class set today. How Yifan was playing white against Fabiano Caruana. And Caruana outrates how Yifan quite significantly. He's 2817, how Yifan is 2649. Let's see what happened. E4. Caruana reacts with E5 classical. We have the dreaded, seen in a lot of World Chess Championships, Berlin defense. Can white actually get any advantage against this? White castles here. This is the main move in live book. Takes, knight takes. Quite often d4 is played here, reaching that dreaded Berlin endgame, which we've seen quite a lot of, which is thought to be, should be okay for black. But we have here the alternative rook e1. This is pretty well known trodden territory as well, and it's thought to be a bit on the equal side because there's only one shared file here, not too much going on, but it's a little bit unpleasant for black nonetheless on the light squares in particular, one could argue, and white is it's easier for white to use the e file than black. I've always thought it was a little bit uncomfortable playing black in the exchange French in these scenarios against dangerous high rated opponents especially, and we see here this pressure build up on light squares now. Queen c2, bishop d3 to f5 is being pressured. It's reinforced at the cost of some dark squares here being weakened. Knight f1, and again this pressure point f5 is subject to attention potentially. F6, a little bit creaky theoretically on the light squares. H3, which makes way for the possibility of also knight h2. A light square blockade is also a facility for white in this position. If black was too ambitious to try to do a pawn storm, g4 is a good light square blockade square. Rook f7, it's awkward for black using the e file. It's easier for white to double rooks here on this e file. So good advert for French defense exchange players, unfortunately, so far this game. A dynamic attempt to change pawn structure here. Black isolates the queen's pawn for a bit of piece activity. Bishop f4. This is quite an interesting move actually. What is black actually threatening? Well, it gets out of the way for the d file bit, maybe rook d1 later. So bishop f4, rook c8. Not minding also g5. It seems a bit provocative. Rook a e1. Now here, with knight e3 in mind, could simplify and accentuate white's light square pressure. G5, a little bit creaky on the light squares, and in fact here, f5 takes a major hit with a tactical move in this position, securing white. Great position really. Black's already incurred isolated queen's pawn. He's further creaking his light squares. White to play. What would you play? Quite an incisive move for positional edge here. If I give you 5 seconds. Knight g3. Yeah, the bishop is able to take on g3 here. We're hitting f5. Black took on g3. Bishop takes. So very, very comfortable position for white. White's rooks enjoying the e file a lot more than black's rooks. The light squares, a lot of pressure, a lot of weaknesses on the light squares. Isolated queen's pawn. You'll note here that d4 fells to bishop c4. Black tries a5. Dual purpose move now. Queen d2 supports b4, but it also looks at not just the queen side but the king side for h4 later to try and break into f4. Weaken f4, isolate maybe these pawns with h4 later. a4, b4, a takes, a takes. So b4 is now a new facility for white. Knight g6, h4, fragmenting some pawns here. Essentially trying to get that f4 square. Yep, if you look at black's pawns now, they've been totally diced. Isolated, 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 isolated. Light square weaknesses. Rooks cooperating on e file. Black is being positionally dismantled in this position. in my view. Black is being dismantled, and we've seen this is a trademark game so far, because we have seen games on the channel before where Yifan is taken apart, for example, Judith Polgar just fracturing all the pawns and then just winning them later in an end game. Here, all the pawns have been fractured. Not too much dicing to do now. Bishop takes. So Queen F4 is available to the white queen. What white needs to do now is convert this, capitalize on this position. And it's instructive. Bishop D6, Queen D4 hitting D5. Wonderfully centralized queen now. Earlier it was echoing this, and now even better on D4. There is a certain beauty to this game, I have to say, for white's play. Look at white's pawn structure here in contrast to Caruana's. Only 2 pawn islands, 4 pawn islands, beautiful rooks, beautiful queen centralized, passive queen, discoordinated rooks, all of the trump cards basically positioning. Rook D8, Rook E3 switching in potentially for a direct attack at some point, an extra option sometimes, maybe to weaken G3 next, try and get the G file. Bishop C8, B4 depriving the C5 square tactic. It was too dangerous to play this. Let's have a look here. Bishop C5. Surely because of Rook G3, this is no good. Pardon me. In this position, Rook G3, and Queen takes D5. Queen F5 on F6 here. Doesn't matter about D3. So if Bishop takes D3. Well, there's Rook takes D3, pardon me. D3 is protected, no problem. So anyway, after Rook E3, Bishop C8, we have B4. Okay, King G7. Yeah, white is in a great shape here. Bishop B5, threatening Rook E8 now, using that E-file entry point on E8. Bishop C7, Rook E8. Quite an invasion here on that furthest entry point. Queen D6 with the threat of Queen H2, that's parried. Queen B6. Okay, Queen D3, dropping the queen back. Bishop D7. That's taken off that light square defender, but now look at F5, totally weak, with white threatening now things like Queen G4. The king is really exposed here. We have Bishop takes G3, check, King H6, Queen H3 check, and the game ended here. If we have a look at King G5, taking, the king is far too exposed. There's a nice winning combination here. Can you see? If I give you 5 seconds in this position, white to play. Mate in 7 with this one. This is the pretty one. There's also another way, but let's have a look at this. Check. And that's mating on G5, for example. Yeah, Rook E5 is absolutely a crushing blow here. On King H6, check. There's another way of mating here, mate in 2 here, check. And mate there. Yeah, the king's far too exposed. It changes my perception slightly, I don't know about you guys, of the exchange French positions. How black can really just be dismantled. Not just for the E-file, the convenience of the E-file for white, but also the light squares just deteriorating. But it was very, very beautifully played, in my view, this game, with the queen movements in particular. Like a nice piece of music to appreciate this game from white's perspective, and beating a much higher rated opponent. So, Hao Yifan, a formidable force in chess, and showing she can compete with the absolute best players in the world. Really took apart Caruana in this game, I have to say. Comments, questions, likes appreciated. Thanks very much.